Hello guys, this is the combo video that will be going with the World's Format Infernoid deck that I ran, and we'll be running in the Mokuba League. So my deck is in order. I'm just going to assume everything is available. We're going to start off with Feast combos, so I'll be doing a lot of cutting and clipping to not have to have these things preset in advance. Alright, so the most generic combo is a 2-card combo where you open Void Banishment, and then you can discard an Infernoid that you didn't want to summon from the deck. So a Tondel, and add from your deck to your hand Void Feast, which you can then set. Now, this gives you 2 Decatrons and Sajet, one of which you make into Deviati, so it can negate spells and trap cards. And the other one you make into Anoku, which can negate... Oh, sorry, Deviati can negate monster effects, and then Anoku can negate spells and traps. So you get a very solid amount of Infernoids in the graveyard. 1 you probably discarded from earlier, 2 new ones that you sent, and you get a Sajet on board who has a decent body, mediocre effect, and yeah, you get a lot for just that. But honestly, I hate that combo, and I think that combo is probably the most lackluster thing that you can do. With Infernoids, there are really a lot more interesting things you can do. So we're going to take a look at the more interesting things, because everyone's seen this combo, and this combo is, boring. Alright, so let's set up again. So preferably you would have a big Infernoid 2 in pitch that you wouldn't want to be summoning from the deck, because you want to get free value for your cards. So discarding an Tondel to search Feast is a very good thing to do. But by just adding any other Void card, you make this so much better, because Void Banishment can then search an Imagination on your opponent's turn, on your follow-up turn, to deal with your opponent's extra deck monsters. So if you actually have just this in hand already, or even better this, you have a card to send other than Void Banishment, which is really nice. So you could set this, and use this as cost, which gives you protection on your Infernoids. Now, it's pretty obvious you could use other Void cards, but I want to just go through things I would do. Now, honestly, I don't think anyone's OTKing anyone at the moment, so I wouldn't even recommend... I would still recommend you do Sajet and double Decatron, but I don't recommend that you go for double negate. Double negate is a decent default play, but at the same time, usually only one of these is relevant. Your opponent can always attack over one and then just do whatever they want anyway. It's not like these guys are big. They're small. They just punch that one or punch that one. And they can force him to tribute one. All kinds of dumb nonsense can occur. Additionally, depending on your opponent's deck, having more things that can banish their cards would be better. So sending Seitzmas or Piatti might be better, making all 3 of these banish from graveyard cards. So that's one thing to consider. Additionally, I think Void Feast is actually much better on your own turn. So let's go into some combos that work on your own turn that are different from just double negate, because double negate is obviously the most blatant and standard thing you can do. So this is my personal favorite Feast combo. We're going to discard and a Tondel in this case. Other good cards to discard include Breakthrough Skill and Void Seer, if you don't have an Infernoid to discard. We're going to search for Void Feast. Okay, and I'm going to assume the worst, that we don't have something else to use it with. So we're going to have to waste our banishment. And we're just going to let our opponent go. And we're not going to play any of this stuff, because everything here, this entire combo, is based on your opponent not killing you on this turn, because you're going to make plays on their turn. So when you come into their turn, you're not going to activate the banishment because you want to be able to synchro summon. You're going to activate Void Feast, summon your 3 Infernoids, and you're going to activate both Decatrons and make them both into Prometheus. So they're both going to be level 2. Now, because of this, you actually have the ability to spin 2 set cards back to their deck. So target a set card, shuffle it back, target a set card, and shuffle it back. At that point, you can synchro with these into Cyphering Lord Omega. And Omega can take a card out of their hand and leave the field. Then you can banish the 2 Prometheus, summon back this Jet, Swing with these for 25 if the field is open. If it's not, you may not want to use these because they're kind of small, but you have the right levels to make a second Omega. And in link format, that's really strong. And then when you can attack over their card, and then this one can return one of your banished cards, and then this one will come back in a main monster zone, as per link rules. So you get 2 monsters from your extra deck this way. And then on their turn, you take another card from their hand. And then when your turn comes up, they'll come back here as well. So you'll get both of these to your main zones on the follow-up. Let me show you my Void Feast OTK, which I don't think anyone else has shown. So Void Feast OTK has to be done on your turn, so you can't activate Void Banishment that turn. So if you have Void Banishment or a Void card with Void Feast, you play Void Feast, you send Banishment or whatever card to summon the Infernoids. Alright, now these are the cards you need to send. This Decatron is going to become Piatti, making him level 6. This Decatron is going to become a Tondel, making him level 9. Your opponent needs to have a card in graveyard at this point in time. So this one is going to tribute and banish that card from the graveyard. Any card, whatever card they have. These you're going to overlay for Utopia Beyond, which will reduce the attack points of all their monsters to 0. So this OTK also only works if they have attack position monsters, at least 1. And 1 by itself, or 2 or 3 of them, but if they have defense position monsters, it could mess up this combo. So this is going to reduce all their monsters to 0. Then we put a Tondel in the graveyard so that we can summon them back. Now, I'm sure you're saying this combo doesn't necessarily put enough Infernoids for this into the graveyard, but these are all assuming you have the resources to do so. Now, a Tondel can attack over 1 monster, and it has to be something that can go to the graveyard when it's destroyed by battle, such as a regular effect monster. Like, this doesn't work on a pendulum monster. It wouldn't work on a trap monster, like a Paleo or a Prime Monarch or something. Because it wouldn't register its effect that it killed a monster by battle and sent it to the graveyard unless it's a regular monster. So you'll attack with a Tondel, attack again with a Tondel, which is 5,600 damage, and then you'll attack with Utopia Beyond, that's 8,600. Another wide open combo is this Void Feast OTK. You're going to play Feast, sending a Void card to the graveyard, summoning 3 usual suspects, sending 2 big guys to the graveyard for their effects. Then you're going to link summon Decode Talker. We'll come out with either 2,300 or 2,800 attack points depending on where your opponent's monster is or isn't, but assuming this is a clear board, this is an OTK because at this point you can banish 2 Infernoids for 1, and I guess it does require 1 more card, but you'd need to banish another one to summon the Tondel here. And what that would give you is 26, 28, and 33 at least, or 38. So this is almost an OTK. It requires you to have at least 1 more Infernoid available, either to discard 1 on Imagination, for Banishment, or or just have 1 in hand or something. Additionally, he's useful for getting your Tiara off the field. Let me show you that. So if you fusion summon Tiara, maybe normal summon a Decatron, and if you have 1 for 1, you can put out another Decatron. Then you can make your Link monster, which has no levels, and summon 2 big guys, and OTK your opponent. A couple other combos worth mentioning. The first is the Imagination Clear Your Own Field combo, which is a little bit of a vague way of saying what I'm saying. You're going to fusion summon Tiara, load your graveyard, and Tiara's going to go to the extra zone. You're going to trigger its effect, and if your opponent doesn't activate anything, because a lot of your opponents will kill this for you, which is great. They'll strike it or they will ogre it, but if they don't ogre it, you can ogre it. And when you ogre it, it leaves the field clearing your levels so you can summon a bunch of Infernoids. So here is the Crystal Wing combo, which is probably the worst thing you can do on your turn, but sometimes a Crystal Wing is a decent card. How to play it in this deck? Well, you play Feast. Preferably you'd always have Waitseer as your discard card. If you have Infernoid on field, you can actually make it unaffected by card effects first, then chain this. So let's say let's say this Decatron's already on field, you can quick play this from your hand, targeting the Decatron, chain feast and send it to the graveyard as cost to summon the 3 Infernoid. So Seer has a lot of applications in your hand, plus it makes your guys fairly safe in the graveyard. So let's run through the Crystalline Combo. So you activate Void Feast, sending Void Seer from your hand to the graveyard. You summon Sajet, Decatron, and Decatron. And in order to go into Crystal Wing, you cannot send Infernoids to the graveyard with these Decatrons. So this is why this combo is kind of whack. It's very neg. You don't really want to do that generally. But the follow-up is you have to Synchro Summon a level 7 Synchro with these. Now, my deck doesn't play a decent one. I guess it plays Zeta, which is mediocre to use for that. So I have set aside a few cards that I thought would be decent to show. Specifically, the best one I think I found for this particular combo is, where is it? Black Rose Moonlight Dragon, because at least when you summon it, it does something. So this will essentially give you that Entra bounce that you wouldn't have had otherwise. So you can do that, and then you can Synchro Summon these into the Crystal Wing. And that's how you get Crystal Wing with Void Feast. Terrible play. You don't really want to do it, but some people think that this card makes sense in this deck. So the Void Feast Crystal Wing combo is actually pretty crap, so there's no real reason to play it, but if you wanted to include an invoked Wind Witch engine, or just a Wind Witch engine, or you can still make a Crystal Wing. Because this deck doesn't make that many extra deck monsters. If you're not familiar with the Wind Witch engine, you have 3 Crystal Bell, Ice Bell, excuse me. 3 Ice Bell, 2 Glass Bell, and 1 Snow Bell. In your extra deck, you need a level 7 Wind Synchro monster, so either a Winter Bell or a Clear Wing. Clear Wing's in my actual deck list. This isn't in my deck list, but I figured it's worth sharing. I'm sure people have tried it before or thought about it before, so I'll just run through this combo and what it's particularly useful for. So you need to have no monsters on board. What you do is you reveal Crystal Bell to your opponent, and then if they don't respond, it special summons itself. And if it does, it can special summon another Wind Witch from the deck. So you summon Glass Bell. Now, both of them have effects. Glass Bell, when it's special summoned or normal summoned, adds a Wind type tuner, a Wind Witch monster. So you can search the Snow Bell. And Ice Bell has an effect to do 500 damage. So you could, if it's normal or special, and it's optional to summon this, it's optional to activate the effect to inflict 500. But depending on the scenario, you might want to stack these chain orders in a way where when you want Ogre gets Ogred. So that's an option. Because you can still normal summon Decatron and synchro it with this card. So that's another option. With both of these on field, you would then special summon the Snow Bell to the field. And so what you would do is synchro these into either Clear Wing or Winter Bell. Just because I have Winter Bell at the moment, I'm going to put out Winter Bell. Winter Bell then would have the option to target one of your Wind Witches in the graveyard and use its effect to inflict burn damage, but that risks this getting Ghost Ogred, so that's not necessarily recommended. This is better for if you're just playing against some sort of deck where they're just going to stall you out and you might want to inflict damage pretty often. You might even want to sit on this card. But if you're just here, if you're not looking to win this way or inflict little bit of damage and potentially get Ghost Ogred, you can then Synchro Summon with these two into Crystal Wing, and the Wind monster that is Synchro Summoned using the Snow Bell can't be destroyed by card effects. So not only would he be able to negate cards like Ash Blossom from preventing your plays with Void Feast, Imagination, or that Grass is Greener. If you're playing a 60 card build, you might want to play that Grass, or what do you call it, Left Arm Offering. You might want to play Left Arm Offering and search Grass and use this to help you. And this is a significantly better way to play a Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon in your Infernoid builds than the Feast combo. So I wouldn't even recommend the Feast combo be played by anyone for that purpose. It's not effective. It does require you to run this but this version does require you to run quite a few different cards in your deck you may not want to run. But I wouldn't run this in my build, but in a 60 card build, it seems like a decent thing to do. It gives you more good cards to open with. And you know, if you just open this one, which is this one obviously is not good to open, but opening it's not the worst thing in the world. But if you open this, you can just normal summon it, add your ice spell to your hand, and then next turn, you can, if they kill glass spell, you can run the same play. Additionally, if you have a Patrula, next turn you can just summon that and synchro into Omega, because this only restricts you, but you can summon to win monsters for the turn it's played. So you could still use this as a level 4 tuner. I mean, it's the same thing as having Raiden in that sense. I do think if it says you can't use its effect, I mean, you can only summon wins if you use its effect to search. So you could just use this as a level 4 tuner. So it's got other applications there. Additionally, you can use this as just a level 1 tuner. So they're not the worst cards to draw because you have so many different Infernoids that you can just put out on the board and like synchro with these things. You could use this in Sajet and make a unkillable Clearwing Synchro Dragon. There's no reason why you wouldn't be able to do that. Anyways, we're going to move on and take a look at some more possibilities. Now, something that my particular build does, it's a little different from other people, is it can recycle cards. You know, I just played through this whole thing called like Zoo format, and in Zoo format they said Daigusto Emerald was a good card, so this is the closest thing I'm getting to playing Daigusto Emerald. Now, a couple of things you can do with this. Because this deck plays so few Infernoids, and you risk like not having them for Imagination, because Imagination, you need to have either your either Inoku or Deviati either in your hand or in your deck in order to do the fusion summon, or on the field. So you risk always not having them early by playing such a small count. But if for whatever reason they wind up in your graveyard, there are a couple options. You know, let's just say these are in the graveyard. If you have a big Infernoid, you can summon it and banish your Inoku and your Deviati. Maybe get another banished card somehow. Then you can play this, shuffle them back into the deck, draw a card, which could be anything, but it could be the same cards, and now your fusion spell is live again. Other things on using this particular card. Sajet, whose effect is normally particularly useless, by forcing your opponent to banish cards from their extra deck is getting free cards banished, which means you can just return your opponent's cards. Additionally, this card has some good matchups with ABC. If your opponent tries to tag out their ABC on your turn, all you have to do is target their A, B, and C that they target and shuffle them back into the deck, and you draw a card. So you don't go neg, and they don't get any of their monsters back. So that's a pretty neat application of Pot of Acquisitiveness. It is the Screw ABC card. An additional thing you can do with Pot of Acquisitiveness is if you're going to be playing Omegas, like I mean, I'm restricted by Worlds format to 1 Omega, but if you're playing multiple Omegas, you can take cards from your opponent's hand, like lots of their Omega. Wait, that's not an Omega, it's Crystalline. Whatever. So let's say you make all 3 in a turn, or 2 in a turn, and take their cards. When your turn comes up in your draw phase, if you drew this and you took monsters out of the hand, you can shuffle them back into their deck and draw a card, and they get your cards back, and they won't get their card back. Same thing for Zeta. If they have a monster that you banish on the field with Zeta, either you did 3 Omegas or 2 in a Zeta, or just a Zeta, or anything really, you can always target some of your Infernoids and their cards, and then shuffle them back into the deck to cause them to go neg. So this gives you some pretty neat applications with these cards. Now, an additional thing is this card actually gives you some safety against Omega. If your opponent targets your cards or takes cards out of your hand with their Omegas, you can, during their draw phase, you can actually shuffle their Omegas back into their deck so they don't get them back on the board. And if they don't get their cards back on the board and you get your cards back, you've kind of used this card to kill 2 Omegas, or 1 Omega, or whatever you want to think about it as. This is a pretty neat defense. This is also really useful against, of course, Dark Synchro Hand Loop, because in Dark Synchro Hand Loop, your opponent summons Omega, takes a card out of your hand, summons Omega, takes a card out of your hand, then they play like Different Dimension Reincarnation, summon back the Omega, take another card out of your hand, and then you usually start the turn with one card, the card you draw. If you draw this, they only play 3 Omegas. You shuffle all 3 of them back into their deck, and you draw a card. So you get a replacement card, and the 3 monsters that they were going to have come back and kill you aren't going to be available anymore. So they might not be able to kill you, but they will probably have another monster on board and a bunch of cards in hand, because those decks tend to play TG Hyper Librarian and just draw a ton of cards. But I do think it's kind of neat that you can use this to prevent yourself from getting completely destroyed that way. That's a pretty neat little application. If you play Imagination and perform the fusion summon of Tierra, if you perform the fusion summon of Tierra, you might want to send Tierra, Omega, and Zeta to grave. These tend to be the best ones to send at this point in time. When Elder Entity Natest comes out, you're going to want to use Natest to destroy your Tierra to get it off the field and fix your levels. But the real reason I brought this up is because let's say this dies and your Anoku and Deviati are in the graveyard for the fusion summon, along with a bunch of other Infernoids, and you draw this. This is kind of a useless card at this point, so what you can do is, if you have Pot of Acquisitiveness, is you can banish the Anoku and Deviati to summon 1 Infernoid, and then you can banish the Tierra and another Infernoid to summon maybe Sight's Moss or something. And now, when you play Pot of Acquisitiveness, you can return your Tierra, Anoku, and Deviati to your deck, shuffle and draw a card, and then your Imagination's live again to play another copy of Tierra. So I think that wraps up all the combos worth mentioning in here. I'm sure special scenarios come up for lots of cards that I didn't consider or didn't discuss. But this is just like the things my deck can do, and I mentioned a few things that other people do in general. Just because they're general questions, like how do you make Crystal Wing and so on. Another thing I'll mention just while I'm here still. Other ways to get Tierra off the board. So let's say your Tierra is on the board and you want to get rid of it. If you're playing an Invoke deck, which is pretty neat, there's my Invoked cards. Alright, so let's say you draw Alistair, or Alistair's in your hand. So you fusion summon, this is just like a card to separate my invokes from everything else. So you summon Alistair, adding Invocation from your deck to your hand, and then you can fuse these two, banishing your Tierra, banishing Alistair, to summon Purgatrio, who's level 7. So that'll clear your levels, allowing you to summon more Infernoids. All of this is assuming you haven't played Banishment that turn. Then you can return this to the deck, add this back to your hand so you can increase his attack points. And depending on the scenario, Purgatrio is like a 1-card OTK. I thought about making a deck that was Purgatrio OTK, just Purgatrio OTK, where you play like, what do you call it? Ojama Trio, and just give your opponent 3 defense position 1000 attack monsters. Use this to boost his attack points to like, well, he'll be gaining 200 for each of the Ojamas, so he'll be plus 600, so he'll be 2900, 3900. So he'll attack, do 29, then 27, and then 25, which I think is game, but if it's not, it's off by a little bit, and you can just summon any one Infernoid and do the rest of the damage. So that's another thing. Or another thing is you can play Book of Eclipse, which can flip your monsters, which clears your levels, allowing you to summon more Infernoids. And if you're against an opponent with low defense monsters, if you were playing this combo, you can just summon Purgatrio and run over their defense position monsters and just go piercing, 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 and just kill them all. So that's another idea. So anyways, I think that wraps up what I had planned. I didn't plan more. This might not have been the most well-planned video, but I want to put it out while it's still relevant at the moment. It'll become more relevant even when Elder Entity Natest comes out. So I hope you got something productive out of this video. I know I didn't discuss like Zoo combos, because I'm just projecting that Zoo's not going to be playable after the next ban list, which shouldn't be that long. September, I think, is the projection. So with that said, let me just show one more thing.
And if you like what you saw, you can find one of our latest uploads right here. Also, YouTube has recommended this video for you. Click here to make sure you subscribe to our channel to get updates as soon as they occur. See you next time.